Fox News. Breaking news.
I'm Gary Franchi coming to you from the White House, where President Trump is fighting a battle that should have been won decades ago. Foreign adversaries have set up entire companies, and their sole purpose? Getting pregnant women onto American soil just long enough to exploit our citizenship laws. And now even voices you'd never expect are admitting the system is completely broken. Now here's why this matters to you and your family. We're $39 trillion in debt. Our economy is straining under the weight of an immigration system that's been weaponized against us. And while hardworking Americans struggle to make ends meet, foreign nationals are literally booking vacation packages to have babies here, guaranteeing their children American citizenship and all the benefits that come with it. It's not about being heartless. This is about our survival, our hospitals, our schools, our social services. They're being stretched to the breaking point. And the worst part, our enemies know this is a weakness. They're exploiting it. China has birth tourism companies operating in plain sight. This is an invasion hiding behind a legal loophole, and President Trump is the first leader with the courage to say enough. And speaking of being prepared for what is coming to this country, you just heard how foreign adversaries are exploiting our system from the inside. If a major disruption hit tomorrow and you couldn't get to the store, how long could your family survive on what's in your house right now? Well, My Patriot Supply is America's #1 preparedness company with over 3 million customers who refuse to be caught off guard. And right now at preparewithgary.com, their best-selling 4-week emergency food supply comes with a free additional week. That's 5 weeks of security for your family. When our enemies are openly exploiting our borders and our laws, hoping for the best is not a plan. Go to preparewithgary.com and protect your family before you need to. All right, now let me show you exactly what's happening and why this debate has even liberals scratching their heads. What I'm about to show you, it proves that the tide is turning on the issue. And it's not just conservatives who are saying it anymore. This first clip lays out something most Americans don't even realize exists. We're talking about foreign companies set up specifically to help people exploit our system. Listen how they describe what our adversaries are doing to us right now. Watch.
I do think there's a large conversation, this is part of it going on in the country right now, about who we're letting in here and why they're here and whether they are loyal to the United States of America. And that's a good conversation for us to have. Now, whether it gets resolved in this court venue or whether it gets resolved in Congress or in other ways. For instance, this conversation over birthright tourism that's going on. I mean, you have foreign adversaries set with companies that are set up to help people facilitate having births in the United States to exploit our system. That is a worthwhile thing for the American people to know. It's a worthwhile debate for us to have. So how the court comes out on this, I don't know. But that's information that we need to know because we do have foreign adversaries that are trying to infiltrate the country and exploit what's been our good nature for many years.
Did you catch that? Foreign adversaries with companies set up to facilitate having births in the United States to exploit our system. This is not a conspiracy theory. This is organized, systematic abuse of American generosity. And he's right. This is information the American people need to know. But here's where it gets even more alarming. One of the most respected legal minds in the country just called the situation insane. Jonathan Turley is a constitutional scholar who testifies before Congress. He's not some partisan talking head, so when he uses words like existential threat and perfectly insane, you need to pay attention to what he says next. Watch.
The fact that we are one of the few countries that continues to embrace birthright citizenship is perfectly insane. And it is a great danger to this government and to this republic. So the question for these justices is not necessarily if they agree with birthright citizenship. I expect the majority does not. But this is what I call in my Supreme Court class a default case. It's when the record is messy. Where do the justices run home to? And what was really astonishing yesterday is it appeared that we might have 9 originalists on the court because the liberal justices started to channel Scalia and to say, oh, you know, we've got to stick with the original intent here. These are justices, when they look at other rights like the Second Amendment, treat that language as barely a speed bump. And they say, well, we have to look at this living Constitution and the problems we're facing today. Well, the problems we're facing today on birthright citizenship are existential, in my view.
Did you hear what he just exposed? The liberal justices on the Supreme Court suddenly became originalists on this issue. The same justices who treat the Second Amendment as barely a speed bump now want to stick with the original intent. Turley sees right through it. They know birthright citizenship, as practiced today, is indefensible. Now, here's where things get really interesting, because it's not just conservatives saying this anymore. You know who Stephen A. Smith is, right? He's not exactly a Trump supporter. He's a mainstream media voice who usually toes the liberal line. But when Bill Mitchell shared this clip, I had to see it for myself. Watch what happens when even he can't deny reality anymore. Watch.
What I'm asking you, as American citizens in the United States of America, do you or do you not have a problem with birthright citizenship? I do. And I'm a brother that loves my Latino brothers and sisters. Absolutely love them. And I'm talking, and I see people in impoverished areas, and, you know, where tyranny is reigning, and whether it's from Haiti or other places, and I'm like, damn, we got to help them. We're the richest country in the world. I got it. We got to help them. To me, if I was the president, I'd do everything I can to make sure the border was closed. But in the same breath, I wouldn't be trying to bother too many people here, other than the criminals. Because we're a gorgeous mosaic, and folks, migrants helped build this country. But we are in desperate times. And when we going to realize that? We're 39 trillion in debt. Our economy is not strong. It's threatening to unravel before our very eyes. Unemployment isn't dissipating. There's been crime. There's pestilence and poverty. There's a lot going on in this country, and there's a lot of evidence that gives people cause to pause and make them scared of the state of affairs that exist in our nation. How do you resolve that? If you're just letting people walk in, especially people who intentionally cross the border illegally just to give birth to someone, to a kid on American soil, to ensure that they're American citizens. And it's clear that that's the intent. What do you do then? Would I handle things differently if I were the president? You're damn right I would. Do I think he's done a lot of things wrong? You're damn right I do. But not everything. Not everything. And I just had to say that about birthright citizenship. Remember, it was originally, the 14th Amendment originally came into play to ensure that enslaved people brought to this country forcibly would be American citizens. But the language was vague and everybody got to use it to their advantage. And what the president is saying now is it wasn't meant for everybody. Supreme Court, or rather the Constitution, wasn't definitive with that in its language. And the Supreme Court has interpreted it as such. But it doesn't mean that a compelling argument can't be made for it to address us, especially if as a nation we are in a state of emergency, which some, meaning millions upon millions of people, would argue we are. That is a fact. That is the reality.
That's Stephen A. Smith saying, I have a problem with birthright citizenship. A man who says he loves his Latino brothers and sisters, admitting we're in desperate times with $39 trillion in debt. He called out people who intentionally cross the border illegally just to give birth. Even he gets it now. But the consensus is building. And now the full legal breakdown that ties this all together. Turley absolutely dismantled the legal arguments for keeping this broken system. Watch how he explains why this isn't just bad policy, it's an existential threat to the republic itself. Watch.
The idea that you can set foot on this soil, give birth to a baby and become a citizen, that is an insane argument. And I agree with John Sauer that it is applicable, even though it is not a legal argument. Your thoughts, Professor Turley?
Well, Kaylee, it's never good either on a first date or a Supreme Court argument to start out with the other person saying you're awfully quirky. That was a gulp moment for the government, and it didn't get much better after that. The fact is, you're perfectly correct. I mean, the fact that we are one of the few countries that continues to embrace birthright citizenship is perfectly insane. And it is a great danger to this government and to this republic. So the question for these justices is not necessarily if they agree with birthright citizenship. I expect the majority does not. But this is what I call in my Supreme Court class a default case. It's when the record is messy. Where do the justices run home to? And what was really astonishing yesterday is it appeared that we might have 9 originalists on the court because the liberal justices started to channel Scalia and to say, oh, we've got to stick with the original intent here. These are justices, when they look at other rights like the Second Amendment, treat that language as barely a speed bump. And they say, well, we have to look at this living Constitution and the problems we're facing today. Well, the problems we're facing today on birthright citizenship are existential in my view.
There it is. Turley called it a gulp moment for the government's lawyers when the justices called their argument quirky. He said the problems we're facing are existential, and he exposed the hypocrisy of liberal justices who suddenly care about original intent when it suits them. The mask is completely off. So let me bring this all together for you. Here's the bottom line. You just heard from legal scholars, media personalities across the political spectrum, and constitutional experts all saying the same thing. Birthright citizenship, as it's being exploited today, is insane. It's dangerous, and it's an existential threat to our republic. Foreign adversaries have built entire industries around exploiting this loophole. We're one of the only countries in the world still allowing this. And President Trump, he's the only one with the courage to finally challenge it. The Supreme Court is watching, the American people are waking up, and even liberals can't defend this anymore. And this is exactly why we do what we do here at the Next News Network. The mainstream media won't show you these clips. They won't tell you that even their voices are turning on the issue. But you need to know the truth. So share this video with everybody you know. Drop a comment below and tell me, do you think it's time to end birth tourism? Subscribe, hit the notification bell, because the story is far from over. President Trump is fighting for us, and we're going to be here covering every single development. I'm Gary Franchi, reporting from the White House. Stay informed and stay free.
The system controls information. Information control is power. They don't want you to see this. The truth only survives together. They don't want this shared. Share this now. You know out.